Hey everyone, my guest today is Doug Fifer. Doug is a recently retired Alaskan police officer who specialized in crime scene analysis, deviant sexual crimes, hostage negotiations, and various special assignments throughout his 25-year career. He started in law enforcement with the Anchorage Police Department in 1996 and retired in 2021. As a highly decorated investigator, Doug has negotiated with serial killers, solved homicides, and worked real-life cases that will shock you to the core. Born in the small town of Homer, Alaska, Doug and his wife Kim raised their children in the Anchorage area. As the author of 50 Shades of True Crime, Doug brings to life stories so bizarre, so intense, and so twisted that the reader will be left speechless. This is not your run-of-the-mill true crime. It's straight from the source, an author-led journey into how far some will go to achieve their sexually freakish desires. You've never read a book quite like this one. It's a cringe-worthy reality check on humanity. You might think you can handle the truth, but this cop's truth is as savage as it gets. When asked about the stressors of being a cop, Doug replied, "Humor plays a key role in keeping your sanity, not just in law enforcement, but life in general." His writing certainly reflects this philosophy, as Doug believes in taking life seriously, just not too seriously. Welcome to the show, Doug. I want to thank you for being here today.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Would you be able to tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you're working on right now?
Sure. Well, my background, I born and raised in Alaska. I was born in Homer, which is a really small town south of Anchorage. And then, in your early 20s, you need a career and a profession. I wanted something that was a little bit different, exciting. So I chose law enforcement. And I joined the Anchorage Police Department in 1996 and then did 25 years serving my community. So that's my professional background. Intermixed with that, the wife and I, we opened up a wine store that's kind of a passion of ours in Anchorage. So we were in the wine business and law enforcement. I joke around I was never going to get fired because I had law enforcement and liquor. Both those kind of sustain all economies. So was pretty interesting. And then post-retirement, I wanted to become a true crime author. So I wrote my first book, 50 Shades of True Crime. And I wanted to come out a little bit different than the normal genre of bank robberies, serial killers, things like that. So I wrote it on the sexual deviant side of criminality, which there's a ton. And it fascinates people because those are the things that happen behind closed doors that we may not want to talk about, but it happens in everyday USA. So that's the book. So currently that's a book out there that I promote. I am writing a second book. It's kind of a sequel crime series to 50 Shades of Grey called Twisted Desires. And that'll be more cases similar to the first book.
Okay. Yeah, I listen to a lot of true crime, like a lot of females, and it does seem that the sexually motivated crimes, there's a lot more weirdness, and I don't know. Those cases are very different, it seems like. Is that a correct assessment?
I think it is. It comes back to all the cases I ever worked comes back to power. So the individual, the perpetrator, suspect wants to dominate the victim. So it's kind of a power trip that they're on. The sex is certainly in play, but that's really where it starts from in all the cases I've ever worked. They are interesting because they're so off the normal spectrum for people, these fetishes, that these criminals have. And that's why I think the book is so successful, because it's a different type of true crime that people have never read before.
Right. So, do you talk about various crimes, or is it or certain cases, or mostly like generics behind, like the psychology behind it?
You get all the above. So since I investigated the cases, you get kind of start to finish as the cop, the investigator. So you get everything, what happened at the beginning, middle, and end, which I think is kind of cool. I even offer the reader an initial chapter called Name That Crime, where I give you a booking photo or a crime scene photo. I'll give you several criminal statutes to guess from, and then you can kind of read and see what happened to that individual and see how good of an investigator you are. So it's pretty interactive, the book. It's a different play on true crime, but it's really fun for the reader. And then it gets into extraordinary cases, all real life cases. It's about 18 stories that I feature in this book. and they're all over the spectrum, but again, very spicy.
Yeah. Right. Right. And so Alaska, you're kind of, well, you are physically disconnected from the rest of the United States. I feel like life out there is very different. Does that make the crimes different as well?
I think there's a lot of play in there. A lot of people
Mhm.
come up to Alaska because it's the land of the, independent people, and it's vast in territory. You can kind of do whatever you want. So I
Yeah.
think they can get away with a lot of crimes. So we have a lot of transient serial killers and criminals that come up to kind of hide out and commit their crimes. We have our fair share of criminals that are born in Alaska and commit these acts as well. I think weather plays into it. You have 8 months of solid winter, darkness, lots of
Yeah.
drugs, alcohol problems, depression. I mean, it makes sense. So I think winter is a
Mhm.
big issue environmentally. And then, there's just unique individuals throughout the U.S. and the world. I call them predators that, go out and seek to victimize people. There's a
Mhm.
small percentage of that anywhere you go. So you have to be very careful, protect yourself and society. But Alaska has its fair share for its population for sure.
Yeah. I was wondering if all that darkness had an effect on crime. Is there more crime? Well, you mentioned alcoholism and stuff, but are there are they different crimes depending on the time of year?
I don't know if I found that. I think that, perpetrators that go out there are predators. They seek to fulfill their power trips all the
Mhm.
time on victims. So they're constantly, hate to use the word hunting, but they're trying to find victims. I think that's year round. I don't think that ever stops in their minds. Certain crimes can maybe amp up a little bit more in the summer versus winter. But all in all, I think crime, 365 days a year is pretty similar no matter where you're at.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, so what is your craziest police case?
I think one of them I can talk about that's in the book. It's
Okay.
called the Taboo Tattoo, and that's a case that fascinates me. And this is a whole chapter on how tattoos and law enforcement kind of intersect. It seems odd, but
Okay.
in fact, we do. Now, while we use tattoos for recognition all the time,
Mhm.
this isn't really about those type of stories, although that's important for law enforcement. This was an individual, a drug dealer that I had arrested long back, long ago. And on his back, he had an interesting tattoo. And we had to document these tattoos for various reasons, for
Yeah.
identification, just for the police reports. So he told me it's a woman on his back. And I thought, is it a girlfriend? Is it your mom? What woman did you tattoo on your back? And I was fairly
Mhm.
new at the time, so he called me a rookie and kind of made fun of me. He said it was a prison tat, but I didn't understand the complexity of what a prison tat might entail. I thought he literally got inked in prison and got some tattoo.
Yeah.
Fascinating story. I interviewed him. He was sent to San Quentin, which is a pretty serious facility in California, one of the nation's most foremost prisons. They have
Okay.
the Mexican mafia there. Drugs are keen inside. He was a heroin addict. So to get
Okay.
his heroin, the Mexican mafia actually tattooed a female on his back and then prostituted him out in the prison in exchange for
Oh.
heroin. So at the jail, I had to see this tattoo, and you can see the tattoo in the book. It was one of the most incredibly detailed tattoos I'd ever seen. But the fascinating part of the story is drug addicts. I mean, you always wonder what rock bottom is. I can't imagine it gets much worse than making that sacrifice to have your tattoo back, tattoo
Yeah.
on your back and then being prostituted out. Fascinated me. And that kind of changed my thought process as a young cop on the extremes that humanity will go to fulfill an addiction. And
Mhm.
so it was an odd case, but I always remembered it. Fascinates me. But humans it's interesting how far they'll go.
Yeah. I've never even thought about that. I guess I always thought you could just kinda ask around for that. So, having the tattoo, it makes it easier for them to recognize, "Okay, we can prostitute him out in return for heroin."
Well, the Mexican mafia controls prisons in California, which fascinates
Okay.
me as a cop because,
Yeah.
I would just shut it down. And how can you get drugs in? How can you get cell phones in? How do you have all this
Yeah.
cash in prison? It's their own little ecosystem. Cops are different than correctional officers, but they have their own world that they work in.
Mhm.
So this guy that went into that prison needed heroin. The Mexican mafia controls that prison. They tattooed him. There's three types of individuals that go to prison, a men's prison. Those that
Okay.
are heterosexual, they don't engage in any type of other sex in prison.
Uh-huh.
Those that are homosexual, we know what that means.
Mhm.
And those, it's another term called prison wolves. And they engage in homosexual sex in prison, but not homosexual sex out of prison. They're heterosexual. Prison
Okay.
wolves would seek an individual like this with that tattoo. And then, as strange as it seems to us, they would imagine having sex with a woman, even though it was a male, for a price that they would pay the Mexican mafia. And then the guy that I had arrested would get heroin in exchange for that.
Oh my gosh.
Well, it's a whole different world that
Yeah.
99% of our society never even thinks about. And that's a good thing that you don't have to deal with that. But that story fascinated me, just the depths that he went. He was in
Yeah.
his 20s. I don't know what ever happened to him. Probably not good long term. And that was just off. That case was simple drug arrest. He was
Mhm.
selling heroin. And what developed after that just literally fascinated me. Even to this day, it still kind of shocks me.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was thinking of it as just a symbol to other people. I didn't realize it was a tattoo of a woman that someone was going to look at while they were having sex with him. That oh, that's so degrading.
Yeah. Everything in the book is going to be these type of cases that the deviance is off the charts that happen. And it's not just drug dealers. These are your everyday neighbors. These are CEOs of major corporations. So
Mhm.
it's all across the spectrum. That I think that's what makes the book fascinating is you don't ever know who's living next door to you. You don't know what your boss does. You don't even know what your friend does. After you read 50 Shades of True Crime, you might have a different idea.
Yeah. And is that kind of part of why you named it that way? Is that so many people are involved in this? So many different types of people?
The 50 Shades is obviously a play off the 50 Shades of
Right.
Grey. You
Yeah.
can't, you can name your book whatever you want. There's no copyright violations on 50 Shades, but it is a
Uh-huh.
play on that just because this is true crime in that sexual deviancy realm. So all the
Mhm.
cases are related in some way or another to sexual deviant acts. So that's the
Yeah.
basis of the first book, and that's where the title came from.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was clever.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, I do think that that's a really interesting point that you were making as far as it could be your next door neighbor, just anyone around you that you would not expect. Um,
Yeah, and most of these suspects, when law enforcement's involved, obviously it's critical or it's at the end or there's some major event. And when
mhm.
we interview neighbors, family members, whoever, they are absolutely shocked at some of these crimes that are
Yeah.
committed from the individual because they were best friends with them. They spent time with their kids. They went on vacation with them. They had no idea they had this ulterior life, like this double life. Not even, they didn't even have a whisper of something being wrong.
Yeah.
That always fascinates me, but I'm probably a little bit from being a cop for so long that I naturally tend to suspect people if something seems off. But a lot of
Yeah.
people don't catch these red flags, these things that are a little bit different. And I'm not faulting them because they're not in law enforcement. But I tend to see those things fairly quickly. But it fascinates me that many people in society don't. They write it off as something that's a little bit odd and still trust
Yeah.
the individual. Down the road, they find out that something was really off.
Yeah. Right. There was a serial killer in my hometown, and he lived kitty corner to one of my friends, and he was caught through a 23andMe DNA thing, one of his relatives, and he strangled women and threw them in ditches. He was a semi truck driver, and through the DNA, they matched him to three different murdered women. And it's just shocking that we live in a town of, I think it was like 1,200 people, that no one even knew that he was just serial killer living among us.
It's,
But
yeah, it's tough. That's called familial DNA. That's a
uh,
wonderful tool for law enforcement because now we can check DNA and go down the family tree and find the suspect. That's relatively new in the last 10, 15 years. So that's a game changer for law enforcement.
yeah, oftentimes I try to think about how difficult it would be to solve a crime before DNA was a thing, too. But yeah, the advancements are great. Do you have any interesting cases involving that?
As far as DNA,
Yeah.
Um, Tons of. I worked a homicide crime scene response team for many years.
Mhm.
So DNA is an absolute wonderful tool.
Yeah.
What I tell people is you can't commit a crime. It's virtually impossible to enter a space, commit a crime without taking something from the crime scene or leaving something behind. So either
Mhm.
way, we're going to get you, meaning we're going to find your DNA or something at that crime scene, especially any violent crime. Or if you happen not to leave anything, when we find you, your clothing, your shoes, whatever we have, swabs, we're going to take something from that crime scene from your body. And that really helps us. I will tell you, as criminals, you know, they're very good at adapting.
Mhm.
DNA is not foolproof. And what I mean by that is jury shouldn't consider DNA only. It should be a
Okay.
totality of the circumstances. And why I say that is there's been cases worldwide where DNA has been planted and
Mhm.
suspects have been convicted based solely on that DNA. Later to find out they were never even there because their DNA was planted. So I
Right.
like juries to look at everything in totality. It can't just be a cigarette butt at a crime scene with your DNA because that could be planted now. Because criminals are, they're ingenious. They come up with the
Yeah.
times. They figure out ways to hide things. So again, DNA is very good, but it's not foolproof by any means.
Yeah. So did you work with serial killers?
I did. One of my main jobs at the Anchorage Police Department was as a hostage negotiator. I was our team leader for our team for about 15 years. I was a negotiator for 20 years.
Mhm.
Absolutely fascinating job to do as a cop because you're negotiating not just with serial killers, but any type of serious situations, murderers, domestic situations, suicidal situations, all of those. But I did have occasion where you would have contact with a serial killer. One of them his name was Josh Wade, and he had been on a crime spree in Anchorage and had been on the run for many days. Eventually, he was found. There was a police chase. He took several hostages in an apartment, and that's where I came in. I was called out to negotiate one-on-one with the serial killer. Very intense, very direct, but that's probably part of the job I love the most. I
Uh-huh.
like talking to people. It flows naturally. I'm very honest in conversations, but it's kind of that chess game with the serial killer. You got to you got to talk him out. You want these two individuals to be safe. He's already killed multiple people. He had a gun. It would be nothing for him to execute a couple more and then come out
Right.
and he's going to go to prison anyway. So a really volatile situation, very mentally draining. In this case for him, I was able to have the hostages released and eventually get him out.
Mhm. Wow. It I imagine that a lot of these people have do they have a lot of varying, like, demeanors, just very different people, to work with? Or do they all kind of, once they're being interrogated, kind of end up doing the same thing, reacting the same way?
It's a great question. There's a couple categories. There's
Okay.
psychopaths and there's sociopaths. They're very different, even though people will combine them into one. A psychopath has no emotions, no feelings, no empathy, absolutely none for anybody. Parents, brothers, sisters, girlfriends, doesn't matter.
Mhm.
Sociopaths, on the other hand, have some empathy. They can have relationships, they can do certain things, but they can also go crazy. So I
Yeah.
find serial killers are almost always psychopaths. They'll hold jobs, they'll be great employees, they can have families, they'll be very organized, but they have zero empathy. They can kill 10 people and eat a hamburger right after.
Yeah.
Sociopaths have a little less. They're not as organized. They probably don't have jobs as long. They're very angry and emotional driven, meaning they can snap on a dime and commit a homicide. A little easier to catch than a psychopath. Dealing with a psychopath, what you do, and it sounds odd, your listeners might find this odd. If I'm in a hostage negotiation with you or an interrogation post arrest, I'm going to play
Mhm.
heavily on their ego. Psychopaths love egos, meaning I'm going to
Okay.
tell you that it's amazing that you got away with these crimes for so long. How did you do it? I'd almost play up how good they were at hiding these crimes, leading a normal
Yeah.
life, how smart they were. The purpose here isn't because I actually believe that. The purpose here is I need a confession. I want them to
Mhm.
admit to all these crimes. So as an interrogator, I'm their best friend. I'm going to keep complimenting them. I'm going to build rapport, and I'm over hours and hours. I'm going to get this confession out of them because that helps what? That helps him go to prison for life, and then it protects society, which is the investigator's job.
Yeah. Is it hard? to do that sometimes?
Well, I think you kind of flip a switch. So I go
Hmm.
into interrogation mode or
Hmm.
negotiation mode, and I flip that switch. So it's not hard because I know I have to do it. It's the ultimate
Yeah.
goal is to convict this individual and put him away in prison for the rest of their lives. So I kind of morph into that role, and it's not hard, especially with all the training. We train this constantly, and especially
Hmm.
being a seasoned negotiator, you've done it 100 times, so it almost comes natural. I think some negotiators, especially, have a natural ability to talk with individuals, to build rapport, to be believable, and I'm very
Yeah.
honest with serial killers, even on the phone. Josh Wade, which I explained to him, he asked me, "Are you going to go? Am I going to go to prison for life?" He wanted to know that.
Hmm.
Obviously, since he's killed multiple people, he is. But as a negotiator, I wouldn't quite put it that succinctly for him. So I told him, Josh, you know that you've harmed others and you're going to have to answer for those crimes. And I left it at that. If I say,
Yeah.
Josh, you're going to go to prison for 452 years, he's probably going to take some more lives or not come out. So you have to be kind of quick on your feet as a negotiator and answer
Hmm.
those questions, being truthful, but maybe shadowing the entire truth. And the reason why you don't lie, if somebody catches you in a line of negotiation, your rapport and trust is ruined forever.
Yeah.
So as I teach new negotiators, the cardinal sin is lying. You never lie. And in law enforcement, rarely do you ever have to lie. You can
Mm.
tell them the truth without actually telling them the entire truth.
Yeah, that makes sense. I had listened to a lot of the Israel Keys questioning, and yeah, they do kind of like pump him up, and it's just like, oh, I would hate to talk to him that way. But if you have a goal in mind and you're trying to get information, then yeah, that's you have to do it.
Yeah,
It's
Israel Keys is a fascinating case. One of my good friends, actually, in my own academy, was the interrogator with Israel Keys. He
oh
did. You
wow.
can. He perked up when they built him up. You can see it.
Yeah.
And I know the public can't watch all the tapes, but that whole case, every time they puffed up his ego, he gave more and more information. It's unbelievable how easy that works, but it
Mhm.
does almost every time.
Wow. Well, and then also, yeah, if you can get over the pumping up somebody's ego and realize like I'm tricking them into giving me information, that would actually, now that I think about it, that would be kind of fun. I think.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of odd doing it at the first time you do it, but remember, I'm going home that night. This individual is
Yeah.
going either they're going to get a multiple 100-year prison sentence. So that's the difference. I know my goal there, right? I need the
Yeah.
confession. We don't always, but trust me, a confession in court, should it go there, is always more helpful than no confession. Despite
Right.
the evidence, you always want that. That's the goal. That's kind of our duty as cops is to get that to protect the public. So did I get a confession every time? No. Did I get a confession a majority of the time? Yes.
Wow. And that would be rewarding as well. Um so okay, you talked a little bit about people go to Alaska it, because is it it's a lower population, it's more dispersed, is that why criminals hide there?
I think so. So the state has about 750,000 people. And remember, Alaska is 2.5 times the size of Texas.
Yeah.
If you put it on the continental US, it almost take up a third of the country, massive in size. So as a criminal, you might think I can come up there. Maybe law enforcement is less sophisticated because of the population, and we have a lot of
Mm.
remote areas. Uh, but nothing could be further from the truth. Law enforcement in Alaska is very sophisticated. What I'll tell you is the remoteness sometimes works against us, meaning if a serial killer is going to hide a body, there's ample space to do that. And typically, we need bodies to solve crimes. Not always. You can certainly solve a homicide case without a body, but it sure
Mhm.
does help to have one because you don't know if they're missing, if they've just disappeared, if they've gone back to the lower 48, which happens a lot. So the bodies are kind of important. And with our massive lakes, waterways, and vast amounts of land, I I couldn't imagine how many bodies are still out somewhere remote in Alaska, and suspects have gotten away with homicides. I think that's their biggest tool in Alaska is just the vast size and the amount of area, and they think they can get away with it. But ultimately, I think most cases we end up catching eventually.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I'm in Iowa and there's a lot of hog farms. So I feel like a lot of these missing people have ended up in in a hog farm, and they're never going to be found either.
That would be a tough
But
one, yeah. Especially, yeah, if you can get rid of a body, it puts law enforcement way behind the power curve because we the body tells us there's a crime. So
yeah,
before that, it's these missing people, and there's a lot of them. We can't tell either way. So the body's so important. So if you can get rid of it, boy, it makes
hmm
it tough for
yeah.
cops.
Wow. All right. What about the psyche between behind deviant sexual offenders? You kind of talked about that with the psychopath and sociopaths. Are there some that are neither though?
Absolutely. Yeah. Most criminals are not psychopaths or sociopaths. The extreme criminals are. Most
Uh-huh.
don't fit in those categories, but they have something odd about them, obviously. I almost liken it to in your own body where you can have people have heart disease, liver failure, kidney disease. I think the brain can have its own disease, meaning you're
Mhm.
just not quite hardwired right. Whether you're born that way or it's environmental, I don't really have an answer for you, but somehow you don't think like you or I would think. It's just not
Yeah.
normal. And then you seek to victimize other. That's the vast majority of criminals. Again, I think it comes back to power when we involve sex. While sex is biological in these crimes, almost everyone that I interview says it started with power. They had the sex, but it was the power that drove them. They liked the control over the victim in
Mhm.
whatever circumstance it was. And that's really what drove them. So I talk about that a lot in the book on the psyche
Okay.
behind these crimes, on what drives these individuals. But literally, it's almost always power.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. The best and worst moments in your career.
Well, 25 years as a cop, if I could do anything else in life, and I've done a lot, I was in the wine business, I've done other business ventures, it would be
Mhm.
to be a cop. I mean, because every day over 25 years is changing. You never know what criminal you're going to run into, what kind of case you're going to work. They're always a little bit different. Plus, you've got the
Yeah.
fact that you get to protect your community that you were born and raised in and grew up in. You know everybody. Anchorage is about 330,000 people. Well, I couldn't have known all of them. I knew a bunch of them. So it's kind of
Yeah.
fun to work in your town. And 95% of citizens are solid people. It's that small percentage that wreak havoc on society. And that's who we hunt. We hunt those 5% of criminals that are creating these problems in, wherever you live. So I think that was the best is just every day it was different. I absolutely love the job. If you can put a criminal away for life, they can't harm
Mhm.
anybody else. That's a pretty cool feeling. If you play that chess match and get them to admit to what they did, it's also closure for the families. Oftentimes I
Right.
would interview somebody on one case and I would get a confession on 15 other cases. So that brings a lot of closure to those families or crimes or victims, whatever it was, whether it was
Mhm.
sexual assaults or whatever crimes. So I thought that was pretty empowering as a cop that you had the ability to do that and to protect your community. So I always love that. The worst part, without question, is children victims. For
Yeah.
some reason, I could deal with homicides on adults, and not that it didn't affect me, but I could work that job. I could, if we put that individual in prison, the suspect, it was all good. I moved on to the next one. Children
Mhm.
victims somehow always stayed with me, meaning it kind of mentally imprints in your brain. I
Yeah.
have kids, so that's probably part of the reason. But that was my least favorite. Every bit as important to arrest that suspect for the crime, but painful for every investigator, not just me, all my coworkers or anybody that's out there working in law enforcement that has a child crime. It is brutally tough on the cops. So I feel for all the cops out there that work those, toughest for
Yeah.
me by far.
Oh, absolutely. I I think about that a lot. You know, there's a lot of times where people seem to be so much more upset about like a dog that's died in a situation, and I think it's the innocence that comes with children and animals. You know, I to me an adult knows but at some point they realize there's evil out there and they understand it, whereas innocence that they'll probably never understand why that happened to them. And um yeah, it's just horrible. I can't imagine.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's part of it, the innocence and the lack of being able to protect oneself. That's brutal.
Mhm.
And I just, and good, bad, or indifferent, somehow you'll always put your brain in their position on what they went through. You kind of try and replay it. I mean, it's horrific, and somehow you can't
Yeah.
stop doing that. So I think investigators who work child crimes long term, boy, that's the toughest job.
Oh, yeah.
And we have many great detectives out there that do it, and hats off, because that's a job I don't think I could have done for a long period of time.
Absolutely. Yeah, that'd be so difficult. Did you ever, I guess, work with victims, like check in on them, keep track of how any of them have done?
Constantly. I think, again, Anchorage
Yeah,
is a small town, and if you're going to the grocery store, you're going to grab a coffee, you're going to run into people that you've dealt with all the time. In extreme cases, certainly we keep up with the victims, checking on them, make sure they're doing all right. Also, their families too, because that's a better gauge for us on how that individual is doing. Make sure
yeah,
they have support around them. Get them the resources if they don't have family to have other people check in on them. I won't say that cops would go and visit every day, because remember, when I end one case, there's 15 cases ready for me the next day. It never
right.
ends. So on a scope breadth of can we check in on them, it's very difficult. So we do check in on them, especially the large ones, but we give them the resources to have people support them constantly. And again, in the community, you're going to run into them.
Mhm. That, I think that would make it more personal, or obviously it makes it more personal that you know these people, and I could see where that would put, I guess, almost more motivation behind it, where it's yeah, you're like you said, you're keeping your community safe. I think that gives I'm assuming that gives you more of a connection to your job versus someone working in a big city, like, constantly with people that they don't recognize. Do you think it helps you to do a better job?
I think it certainly doesn't hurt, right? I
Mhm.
think it does, because you know the
Right.
community. And I would often, because again, I have kids, I have daughters, I would often think, wow, this individual that we're tracking or trying to find or interrogating, boy, if they got out again, my own family could be victims, my family's brothers and sisters, in-laws, whoever could be
Yeah.
victims. That's definitely a driver. I think that probably drives every cop across our nation, whether it's New
Mhm.
York, big cities, LA, or small towns like smaller towns like Anchorage. I think it drives them because you never know, and cops inherently want that win. They want that suspect in prison to protect. That's why you took the job. Again, some of your listeners may see small percentages of incidents with cops that aren't good, but
Mhm.
the vast majority, and at 25 years, I can tell you this: 99% of cops do incredible work. They're motivated. That's why they took the job initially, is to protect society nationwide, and convict these criminals to protect them. So I think it's amazing the job they do. I was in it for 25 years, so I could see it. But those cops across the nation right now that are working every day, God bless them, because we need them. Small percentage of evils out there, and we've got to have them to handle that.
Yeah. Yeah, that, it's interesting because, yes, there are some cops out there that can give a bad, reputation and unfortunately affect everybody else, but they're the first people you call when you need help with something, and I think that needs n I just I think that needs to be recognized more often, the type of stuff that you deal with every single day, to try to help the community.
Yeah, it never hurts, and YouTube's it gets a lot of views, but it'd be nice to have a lot of positive law enforcement interactions, because we have them all every day.
Yeah.
More on that platform instead of the ones that you see, that it's a small percentage. But I do remind people, it doesn't matter what industry or profession you come from. If you're a doctor, if you work for an oil company, you're going to have employees that are bad.
Yeah.
Lawyers, every profession has them. That's what it does. But again, the vast majority of law enforcement do the job every day with the single goal of helping their community.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I know. I know I appreciate law enforcement. I think a lot of people do. I think the media just spreads negative a lot faster than, anything positive, and that's really unfortunate. But,
Yeah, I
um,
agree with you. Anchorage was a incredibly supportive city, and Alaska, as a state, was incredibly supportive. Still are to law enforcement.
yeah.
So I agree with you. The many citizens They get it, right? They know that
Mhm.
we need protection. They know that cops are doing the right thing. They support them, and that's always appreciated. I tell you what, I would get a lot of comments. Thanks for your service. Thanks for what you're doing.
Yeah.
So for your listeners, if you see a cop somewhere, it means a lot to them just to say that, just as you're passing by. It doesn't have to be in depth or anything, but it means a lot because they're out there for 12 or more hours a day, and their sole goal is to protect and to make sure that there's no harm coming to your community.
Right. Right. Can you give the audience tips for protecting themselves in everyday life and from sexual predators?
I'd probably give you the same tips that I give my own kids, which
Yeah.
so you know that these are legit. And this sounds like an easy one. And in every criminal case I've investigated where something happened, this was missed. And it's literally follow your gut because the victims that I interviewed knew at some point something was wrong, something didn't feel right. There was a red flag of some sort, but they thought, no, it can't happen to me, or it's something else. And they didn't trust their gut, their instinct. So that's the
Mhm.
first thing is if you do that, you're going to avoid 90% of the problems. Are there crimes where there's nothing you can do, meaning that you're going to be victimized or somebody's going to attack you or trying to abduct you? Yes, but I'll tell you percentage wise, extremely rare. Predators like to
Yeah.
take victims that are cooperative, where there's a trick saying that they're not going to harm you. They're going to take you somewhere and just go with them and you'll be okay.
Mhm.
Some will fall victim to that and believe it. So the first thing is trust your instinct. I would never get into a car, despite if somebody had a gun, a knife. And what I tell people, and this is a harsh reality, if they're going to kill you right there, they're certainly going to kill you later. So your best
Yeah.
chance is to fight there, scream and run. Criminals are going to leave and try and find a victim that doesn't fight. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't think in my career I've ever seen where somebody was shot or stabbed to death trying to abduct them when they fought. The criminal simply took off and went and tried to find a different victim. So trust your guts, the first thing. The second thing is be smart about protecting yourself. We
Mhm.
can go back to the empty parking garage at night where you're going to walk through it and go to your car. Have somebody walk you to your car or something. If it feels strange where you shouldn't be there, go back to
Yeah.
where you are, call a friend, have somebody escort you. It seems simple and people don't like to bother other people, so they don't do it and they end up becoming victims. Again, it's very rare, so I don't want to scare your audience, but these are little things you can do. Lock your doors and lock your windows at night. I wish
Mhm.
we lived in a society where you could leave everything open and nothing would ever happen. But I can't tell you the number of crimes that were opportunity, meaning that a burglar, a sexual rapist found an unlocked window or door and made entry into a house, and then somebody was victimized. So it seems simple, but I promise you, if your listeners were to go around their house right now and check every door and window, there's probably at least one unlocked. Uh,
Right.
so at night, lock them up, sleep well. If you have an alarm system, even better. If you have Ring camera systems that alert you, even better. You've got
Mhm.
to do things that protect yourself because police aren't everywhere. They can't be
Yeah.
there in 2 seconds. So protect yourself first. We'll certainly protect you as well, but you're the first one that has to do it. And those are some tips. They seem easy, but they're
Yeah.
forgotten constantly. And they don't take much time. They're easy to do. So for your listeners, please do those.
Yeah. Yeah, my sister and I were talking about my nieces, one day when they were in high school, and, they're very different from each other, and, we have this thing called Iowa Nice where, that has come up, when certain crimes were committed where it's like, you don't wanna be rude to somebody that's talking to you, and so it's almost like you fight your gut instinct and then become a victim, and one of my nieces is so sweet, like, I think she would be the one that just would get into the car and, "Alright, okay, where are we going?"
Yep.
Whereas the other one, I was working with her one day, we worked for a farm, and, I had to run to go get some stuff, and I left her with the sweet corn truck, and I'm getting text messages from her of a license plate, a description of people, and I'm like, "What the hell is going on?" And, she said that some guys were asking her she said they were asking her normal questions, but looking at her weird, and she just got in the sweet corn truck and locked all the doors and then just started texting me the information, and that might look rude, but it coulda saved her life,
Yeah.
I
Well, I think first we got to get her a police application and get her into the force because I think she'd be great. Um, and I agree with you. There's two different personalities for nieces. One that might open the door at 3 o'clock in the morning just to see who's knocking on the door, and then
Right.
one that would yell through the door, "Hey, who is this? I'm calling the police." Like, not to be over paranoid, because I don't want to live in a society where we're always looking around. That's
Hmm.
a little too much. But just that instinct of protecting. Somebody pulls up in a car and asks you questions, can still be polite, answer the questions. There's no way in hell you're getting in that car. You just can't do
Yeah.
it in today's world. So you politely tell them thanks, but no thanks, and then you move on. Again, very rare they're going to pursue you, use force out in a public forum. They just won't do it.
Hmm.
So you can be polite and stern, and that's where I think is a good thing to do
Yeah.
for your niece. You have to, and again, it's sad that we have to even think about that, but we do. So the things you can do to protect yourselves are really important.
Yeah. So the niece that we worried about more, that's the kind one, she's now married to a law enforcement
Okay,
officer.
we're good. She'll, she'll
Yeah.
be she'll be learning every night, because I would often come home and my wife would be like, "What happened today, or what type of crimes?" So you're going to tell them if you
Yeah.
talk to your family. So she'll learn real quickly, and that's probably good for her.
Yeah. Yeah. She found the perfect husband
Good.
for her. So, yeah. All right. What do you want the reader to take away from this book?
Well, I think we talked a little bit about it. I think it gives a good idea of suspects that prey upon people in our community. So it will kind of give you that more broad look of what possibilities are out there, and maybe what you should avoid, and also red flags. I talk about them in my book. Again, these are everyday people with families and
Hmm.
kids, but there's little things that were odd about them that came up from time to time, and people just didn't key in on that. So again, I think the book will help, one, to protect yourself. Two, it's a unique read in that you've never read true crime like this. And that's why I wrote the book, is because there's lots of true crime out there. There's nothing like this book at all. You're going to
Yeah.
walk away with a greater appreciation on the depths of humanity, how far they will go to fulfill sexual fetishes.
Hmm.
And in the end, it may help protect yourself, meaning you don't have to be paranoid, but maybe I'd think about this a little bit more, and not trust somebody just because they have a high paying job. They've been amazing in their career. They have a lot of money, whatever it could be. You'll have a little more knowledge of what to look for.
Yeah. Yeah. And how, what's your next book going? When can we expect your next book, by
Yeah,
the
well,
way?
this is the first book, 50 Shades of True Crime, and
Okay.
that's available. I mean, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, wherever you shop for books. It's also
Yeah.
on audio and Kindles, whatever your preference is. The audiobook is fantastic. I know a lot
Okay.
of people now, nobody reads anymore; they listen to books. So audiobooks
Hmm.
are hugely popular. Probably the number one seller out of all of them is my audiobook. Again,
Okay.
so if you're commuting to work, or you want to listen to something that's unique with a little bit of Alaska flavor in law enforcement, it's quite an interesting book. It was popular, so I think with my publisher, the next book is a similar play on a crime series,
Okay.
and so it's going to be Alaska. It'll focus more on obsession, and with a little subtitle of Twisted Desires. So again, more it's still going to be on that sexual realm, but some of
Hmm.
the larger cases in Alaska. Since I work there, you get a majority of cases in my state. I
Yeah.
do some of my training that where I traveled out with other agencies and departments. I will reference some of those cases in there as well, because they're fascinating. Just doesn't happen in Alaska; it happens everywhere in the U.S. and worldwide. But a quite unique read for individuals. I get a lot of emails on my uh, webpage saying, I can't believe this actually happens in society, because they're so
Yeah.
fascinated. I do a lot of book clubs where they ask me to talk, and the questions I get, especially, I find this odd because females from 30 to 60 ask the most interesting questions. They dive deep
Yeah.
into these crimes. Shocks me a little bit that they're so forward on asking, "Hey, what about this,
Yeah.
this, and this?" So that's always interesting to me. But that's obviously the number one reader of my book is that age group.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I plan on reading the book, and I'm going to recommend it to my friend Elizabeth because I know she's gonna love it. So, so
Well,
I'll
good.
um I'll have to have you back on and we can talk about it once I haven't been able to get to it yet. I appreciate everything that you sent me. So I will be reading it and yeah, I'll have you back on and we can talk about it.
Yeah, I'll come on
So
for the second book when it comes out. It's probably
yeah.
be around the first of the year ish before that book comes out. But for your
Okay.
listeners, if they want to watch the book trailer to see if they're interested in the book, you can go to
Yeah.
dougfifer.com, and Fifer is just Fifer. Watch the book trailer and see if you're interested, and go from there.
Perfect. dougfifer.com.
Yep.
Sounds good. All right. And then are you on social media at all?
Yep. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all that.
Cool.
Yeah, and
Sounds
those links are all on my website. So, and there's a lot of other background information on the website, pictures of the books that uh, the publisher didn't quite want to go into the book, because there's
Yeah.
some, but it's up to the reader if they want to go to the website and actually view those photos.
Sounds good. I
Cool.
like that your shirt matches my background. That was just a random
There you go. I
observation.
dressed to impress.
Yeah. Perfect. Sounds good. Well, I want to thank you for being here. Yeah, I'm sure I'll have a lot more questions for you in a future episode. And yeah, I'll make sure to get your website on the show notes, and I'll let you know when the episode's out.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Sam.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.